put some signage up in the car park to just say vehicles are parked at their own risk. Because if I'm going to park next to a park, I kind of expect that a ball could come flying in, because a child could be playing with the ball as they walk through the cars. So, and it's quite an
children, they're unlikely to want their ball out in the car park.
Relaxed.
I think she's going to grow up at the end of the day. Yeah. Okay, so are members happy then that we I need to contact area and science to get a
Sign.
quote?
You gotta go down and do it.
So it's basically just to say vehicles are parked at owner's risk.
Yeah.
Okay. Everyone happy that we do that?
Yeah.
All those in favour, please show. Okay.
Trying to be proud of us.
Ask for a discount.
Right.
Okay. Yes. Okay, so Knoll Footpath improvement project. So basically, just give you an update on where we were. We sort of touched on this earlier. This we've been in liaison with indirectly with the Somerset Rivers Authority, but through FWAG, the Farming and Wildlife Action Group Advisory Group. So they've been liaising with Kenny Gordon as a contractor, who came up with some proposals for drainage work to be carried out on third-party land, which is above where the footpath runs behind the church. The proposal for that is in effect to split the flow of water and to slow its flow as it comes down the hill, so it's not coming down in the torrent that's done the damage in the past. The very rough outline of what we're talking about, in effect, is some work in the woods at the top of the hill to act, as they described it, like a beaver and create little dams, and that will hold water and let it, these sort of, I think they call them leaky dams, so they hold water but they let it out slowly. There is an existing gully through that fence which would be compartmentalised at various points, so again it would hold water for a while and then it would flow over to the next bit. There was a proposal to have a almost like an attenuation pond further down, and that was included in the initial quote which we passed back to FWAG for them to try and find some grant funding. They then asked that to be taken out because they said they didn't think there would be a problem, but if there was an attenuation pond and for any reason it failed, you're holding a body of water which would then all suddenly come out in one go and could cause problems for houses lower down. So they suggested that was removed from the estimate, and we've gone back to Kenny to ask him to do an updated quote for that to be used by FWAG to apply for grants, and that's where we currently are with that one. There's a second tranche of work which is relating to the land beyond the kissing gate at the back of the church, which is the slope going up the hill. Initially we had talked about them putting in cross drains to take the water from that and put it in the ditch that runs down the side of that path. It's been suggested that could be a bit of a problem in terms of maintenance over the years, and that what's been suggested is rather than doing that is that the path is regraded, so instead of it being a slope like that, it's a slope on a tilt, so that the water tends to flow down and across into the ditch naturally rather than it coming straight down again. And then from that ditch there would be a ditch created above the path behind the church to take the water down the hill and stop it going across our path and doing damage there, and stop it, the bulk of it, going into the churchyard. That, again, we've been advised on that. We cannot get funding from the Rivers Authority because that will be seen as more footpath work. It's not drainage work in the same instance, so we would have to look at the funding, which is where our project funding could then kick in. And the third bit to the scheme, which we're still awaiting for further detail, is another guy who's involved with both FWAG and the Rivers Authority has been in touch with the Highways Authority to ask them for further details of what the highway network drains are once you get to the road, and whether there is a way of feeding into that rather than sending stuff just down the road or through people's gardens. So that we're waiting to hear back on as well, but that's the sort of progress where we are at the moment. Obviously we will be putting in some funding towards that. We're looking for grant funding from the Rivers Authority, and and obviously if we can go for other grants as well, then we can look at that. But that's sort of, I think that's where we are on that.
Yeah.
Colin.
Bob, did you say that the grading work of the footpath would be would not come within our expenditure, but the ditch from the kissing gate, if you like, the old kissing gate, across the back would be our responsibility?
No, so it's the other way. So we can get Somerset Rivers Authority grant funding to help with the work in the field, in the woods, and the ditch that runs above the footpath behind the church, because that's all seen to be drainage. But the path that goes up the Linham's field, that's seen to be footpath work, and so that's not Somerset Rivers Authority.
So we would have to pay
Yes.
grading that.
Yeah, correct.
Okay. I think that would be a really good job to do.
Yeah.
That would be surfaced as well. That would be compacted stone, because they don't see that that's going to be it's not going to run away because we're tilting the whole.
Yeah.
I mean, to a point you wouldn't see the gradient that they slope it at, but it'll, because you're not going to want to walk on something that's like that, but it'll have this little camber on it to lose the water, rather than these cross drains which we were initially talked about, they're going to fill up with stone or rubbish or mud or whatever, and then we're going to be up there every 5 minutes digging them out.
Yeah. The other thing they did say they would consider doing, and they haven't made up their mind firmly yet, is potentially putting almost like sleepers across. So they would act again as a way of diverting the water towards the ditch. But they'd also have the effect of stopping it being one long slope where you get all the gravel just sliding down.
It's funny because every time just as an aside, every time I go up that path, I always think of John Harper, because when Somerset looked at that path, they put like a gutter, if you like, across the path, and they said that water will come down the path, go in the gutter, and flow into the ditch. John Harper said, it won't work, it'll fail, it's rubbish. And sure enough, it's rubbish. So, yeah, it is. It's completely failed. Completely.
So as a question, when you mentioned that the water, we're potentially looking to see if we can go in the main highway drains, as an observation from anyone that's been around for a while up here, do we get much runoff on the roads up there? So does it go into, aside from into these gardens, is there much runoff if we were able to capture it up at the top into the highways? That would solve the problem. I'm just wondering if there's any additional water that comes out that's not related to this footpath.
There's water comes out everywhere.
It's like,
Right,
it's like rivers,
runs off.
torrents.
Down each way.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
And I mean, part of the problem this time was, I mean, we've never seen it quite as bad as this time. It just ripped the path up that we used to be there, and it deposited the path in Cedar Close. So you had huge amounts of gravel all the way down Church Lane into Cedar Close, completely blocked the drain at the bottom of that, and it was pretty much halfway down towards the school, wasn't it, where they got gravel all the way down that road, because it just and that's why they're trying to. Ultimately, they said to us, we can't reduce the amount of water, but we can try and slow it and split it. If it's coming in different areas and not going so fast, it won't do so much damage.
Have we got any sort of figure that we're looking at paying ourselves?
We don't know for certain yet. There was a broad figure which is circa sort of 20,000 ish as a ballpark, which would, and that's for the whole issue. So we would be looking for a good proportion of that to come out of grant. If you look at what we've got in our budget at the moment, we've, as Owen said, we've carried forward just over £5,000 from last year's, and we put a further £7,000 in this year. So technically, we've got about £12,000 in our projects budget, which could go towards this. But obviously, we need to find.
So we'd be looking at saying, this is the figure, how much can we get in grants, and then we just make up a shortfall. Yeah.
Okay. Right. Play area. So on the play area upgrades, Owen's been in touch GB Sports, and they have advised us that they are planning to start on site for the zip wire on the 8th.
Yeah.
Yeah, 8th of April.
Yeah.
So fingers crossed, by this time next month, it should be in place. The only slight thing we've got to do is we're just chasing up some work that we need to do at the top of the green before they get in there. Because there's a tree that needs removing, which technically we could remove it after the work's been done, but it'll be a hell of a lot more easy if we can get it out before they put a big wire across it. Safety matters, where I think we've mentioned GB Sports again to look at the motor, haven't we, in terms of when they come out here to see what needs to be done to that, because there were the wire bits that we asked them to do a repair to, and we also mentioned to them the dip in front of where the cricket bit is in the goal. So we'll need to have a look at that, but that might be a project again we need to look at later in the year. Cycle racks.
Before we move on,
Yes.
with regards to the zip wire,
Yeah.
you're obviously all excited for it. Do we need any safety signage? Is there an age for children? Because I know I've been to certain parks and it says you need to be under 10 to use them. I'd be very disappointed if it is. But is there any considerations we need to make?
I mean, there was a question raised, and I think Amanda, you raised it in the last meeting, because
There's a
we
sign.
technically we have a sign on the green which says no kids over 12 to use the play equipment. It never is enforced.
Right, okay.
I think it was introduced. I mean, it was introduced years and years and years ago. I think when the climbing frame first was put up, because the climbing frame is a climbing frame aimed at younger kids rather than older kids. So it's behind that unit. I mean, it doesn't.
I'm just worried about things like weight limit. So you'll get, I'm just thinking myself, if I go on there.
As
and
long as
I-
there's if it's
break
a
it.
single person on there,
Yeah.
there is not a problem. Because before, when they were talking to us about safety stuff, it was 20 stone-ish is what you should be above.
Yeah.
If you have multiple people getting on it at the same time, then that could cause a bit of an issue. But then again,
Yeah.
it's policing.
Yeah.
Colin.
Are you saying that, from what Charlie says, that anyone can use this?
Get in the queue, Colin.
Is that? Okay.
I mean, we could limit it to certain people, but then who's going to police it? I mean, how do we enforce it? So.
I think if there's signage saying that the park itself is designed for child 12, which is the majority of people.
We have had a
Don't go
complaint.
jumping over the fence having a party.
But there are quite a lot of mothers and fathers who are seen using the equipment when their kids are using the equipment as well. So
I go on
where do you
season.
draw the line?
I would like to propose that the chairman does the maiden
On film.
Waylaw has a zip line. Can we contact them to see about their safety procedures?
Yeah, we decided to do that, and also I think Barrow have got it as well.
Yeah,
Yeah, I thought, my kids are at the age where they use this sort of stuff, and I've never been to a park where there's been any limit to it.
And have you been on the zip line yourself?
Absolutely. We did have a local resident who phoned me the other day and complained that over 12s were using the play equipment, and were we going to enforce the rule?
That's where that sign needs to come down.
And I said, well, yes, we'll have to discuss it.
There's probably someone who saw me on that, because I was on the seesaw.
Well, I mean, in which case, the sign that says about the age limit is on the back fence of the village green. It is in a pretty dire state. I mean, if it's going to be there as a sign, it needs cleaning or replacing. Or do we just simply remove it?
I do
Maybe take it down.
You
I only saw it when I was doing the green walk
It's
round
covered in-
last month.
Algae
and lichen and-
Yeah,
I propose to remove the sign.
Colin.
I'm only thinking of someone that uses the equipment and has an accident. If we've got a sign that says 12-year-olds, nobody over 12 to use this equipment, and a 14-year-old, 16-year-old uses equipment and has an accident, and there's a sign saying you can't use it, and they use it, and they have an accident, are we therefore not liable?
I don't think so, because I mean, if you remember when we had to put the fencing up, when we were doing work on the green, we were told in effect if someone got over the fence and got in there and injured themselves, we'd still be liable because we hadn't taken enough effort to make the fence impenetrable. So having a sign up there won't cover us in terms of insurance.
I could ask the insurance company, but I
Yeah.
tell you, if I ask them, they'll say, yes, you need a sign. I guarantee it, because they're always very safety first, aren't they?
Yeah, well, that's what.
They're protecting their insurance claims.
And that's what I was.
If our members happy, then maybe that we go a halfway house on that and have a word with GB Sports, because they're doing stuff on all grounds
Yes,
and
that's it.
inspections
Yeah,
and
yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, okay.
They do our safety inspections, so whether we just ask them as to whether we should have a sign and whether that,
Yes.
if we're going to have one, maybe it needs to be at the front of the green rather than hidden behind the equipment.
I think it'd be a bit rough to restrict it to 12 and under, because there's a lot of old kids that use the swings and, you know, stuff, and it's
I
nice
think
to see them.
An age thing is quite deceptive. So my
Yeah.
son is now 6'6". So when he was 12,
Yeah.
he was probably nearly 6 foot.
Yeah, so you
And
can't tell.
So it's very, very difficult to.
Yeah, we don't want to be like Alton Towers and you've got to go and measure
But I think there at least they've got staff on site.
Yes.
Yes,
Exactly,
yeah.
Unless we're going to have somebody
Yeah.
constantly up here monitoring who's there.
No, and I don't think we can put
Well,
age limit.
then the sign, you use this at your own risk. We have